Speakers here. Next speaker will be Gustaf Almqvist from the Stockholm University and the Baltic Sea Future. And you're going to talk about need for a broader ecosystem view in Baltic fisheries management.
Exactly.
Welcome, Gustaf.
Thank you, thank you. Whoops. Now it's there. Great. Thank you. So I will take this opportunity to talk about why there is a need for a broader ecosystem view in the Baltic fisheries management. And I will also take the Eastern Baltic cod as an example to illustrate this. And also try to highlight the necessity to actually perhaps us to think over if we actually manage, if we have the right management that we want, especially if we would like to have conservations for the smaller scale and local fisheries. So why am I talking about the Eastern cod? Well, it's quite simple actually. It is a typical Baltic species and being by far the most abundant predatory fish or fish-eating fish. It has a key function for the whole ecosystem because it structures the whole ecosystem. And sadly, it is in a worrying state nowadays. But first, some words about ecosystem-based management. And as been mentioned before, it's today listed as one main objective in almost all EU law and legislation and directives when it comes to aquatic management. And Sofia kindly gave us some descriptions about it just earlier. So just a quick recap. It means that we should manage the whole ecosystem and us humans being part of it. So that means that we also should take the economical and social interests into account, which I think we all can agree on. But often the view is, as it's in this picture, I think, with weight towards the human needs. And in the Baltic case, I think we need to have another view and step back a little bit and have a big weight to the whole ecosystem itself, because we know that we have all these different stressors that is severely affecting the ecosystem. And fisheries is just one of these stressors. But talking about fisheries is actually very much handled in isolation today. And which I think we need to change. So for that to happen, we need to have that. I think it's two things that's very, very important. We need to have a working political management structure and also clear mandates whom to decide about these different issues in a more holistic way. And also, we need to define the stakeholders and the interest groups and look at the different needs that they have. Because it's so also that depending on what stakeholder you think about, that change the whole management, but also how the fisheries, the fish species themselves are affected. Today we have two main stakeholders within the commercial fisheries in the Baltic when it comes to the cod fisheries. And that's fishing with using demersal or bottom trawls and gill nets. And this one example how these two different gears or fishing techniques affect the cod stock is that fishing with gill nets actually leaves the bigger individuals still in the water. And why is that important? Well, these larger individuals are extremely important for the reproduction. Large females like this, they produce high numbers of fish eggs of good quality and with a high survival rate. And this extremely big female, she was caught in outside the island of Fyn, or Fynen, perhaps it is in English, which is a non-trawl area. And these larger individuals are not only important for the reproduction, but also for the whole ecosystem, since they feed on different sizes of cod. They feed on different sizes of prey and different types of prey. So why is this difference between gill nets and trawling? Well, it comes to what we call selectivity. That is actually which fish is caught in using different types of gears. When it comes to gill nets, it is actually only the middle-sized cod in this example that are caught. So that leaves both the larger ones and the smaller ones still in the water. And that is because when you fish with gill nets, you only catch fish within a certain size range, depending on the mesh size in the nets, leaving then the larger ones that are so important for reproduction and so on. If you compare it to selectivity in trawling, we can see that trawls, sorry, it takes a while here. Yeah, trawls more or less catch all fish from one size and up, leaving just the small ones in the water. To be honest, this is perhaps a little bit simplistic description, as of course some larger individuals can escape when trawling as well, and it's all very depending on the overall fishing pressure. But if the fishing pressure is high, it can end up like this. And today, 90% of the eastern Baltic cod is caught using trawls. But probably even more important for the cod stock nowadays than the way we fish is also another environmental problem. It's another environmental problem, which is the spread of these poorly oxygenated bottoms. And we can see here how it has increased during the last century. And that has actually resulted in that small-sized cod are forced to roam in these areas where they actually only can live. And in those areas, they compete for food, for example. And important food for them are these benthic animals, as these crustaceans and clams and worms. And in periods during the last years, we have seen that cod has not only been very small, but has also been thin and meager. And maybe even worse is that areas that used to be very suitable for cod reproducing, so-called spawning areas, has reduced from 3 ones, the Gotland Deep, the Gdansk Deep, and Bornholm Deep, to only one left, the Bornholm Deep. Interestingly enough, we see some cod spawning in other areas as well, as for example here outside or between Sweden and Åland, even though this has not been studied that well. Another change is that nowadays cod spawn during larger parts of the year, and also the spawn will get mature when they are much smaller than they did before. Now they can be female becomes much mature when they're around 24 centimeters, and in the 1990s they became mature when they were about 43 centimeters. Another worrying feature is that the small-sized cod today is located here only in the south. And we used to have them spread all over the Baltic before. Taking all this together, and also adding the future, or actually ongoing challenges with the climate change, has made HELCOM to list this population to be vulnerable in the Baltic Sea. But taking us back to the comparison of trawling and gill net fishing, I'm going to take the classical example of how size structures of cod in the Sound or Öresund, where is compared to the western and eastern Baltic Sea. And here's the Öresund, or the Sound. And here we have the eastern Baltic and western Baltic Sea. In the Sound, is a non-trawl area, and in the other areas, the trawling is allowed and frequent, as we can see by the orange here in the map. And it is striking to see how big difference it is when it comes to size. This is updated data from the 2010s, and we see that in the Sound they are much larger, longer than they are in the other areas, but it's even more striking when you look at the weight. They're almost double as heavy in the Sound compared to the other regions. And also, there are in the Sound, there actually are quite a few big individuals left. If you look at both in the Western Baltic and the Eastern Baltic, the all bigger individuals are almost absent today. So having said that, why is it so that we have so little little small-scale fisheries in the Baltic? And it's actually declining very fast. Well, it has to do with the economy, of course. And one thing is, I think Bengt can tell us more about this. It's actually his picture. This is something that small-scale fishermen, that when searching his nets, can be faced with, and that's the seal-damaged fish. And there are ways to get around this. We have developments when it comes to different gears and so on, but we are not really there yet. But there are some developments with different pots and also with trap nets that are more or less seal-safe. And of course, we could manage the seals and the cormorants that we talked about before as well themselves. But what's even more important today, I think, is that we have not, and we haven't had it for years, a fishery policy that actually take into account the specific needs of small-scale fisheries. And one of the most obvious things for having a viable small-scale fishery is that there has to be more fish in the water. And today, this distribution, the cod distribution, as you might remember, and for having a local fisheries, we need to have a better dispersal, a better spread of them. And for that to happen, there probably must be more fish in the water, and preferably fish of different sizes. So I believe that we have to raise issues like this to be able to deal and balance different stakeholders, the objectives of different stakeholders, to make us move forward in the first place. And also, even though that we know now that there are all these environmental issues that are really problematic, we also know that it takes extremely long time to correct these ones. But what we can do is regulate fisheries, and that we can do directly. And also, we should allow the cod to adapt to this changing climate and to the environment, not only to adapt to the way we fish, as it has been going on for a long time. And finally, and before I leave the floor to this handsome bloke here, I want to highlight the need to include also other stakeholders beside commercial fisheries. For example, anglers that are both directly and indirectly affected, and that are very numerous today in the Baltic. Thank you.
One short question to Gustaf related to fisheries and cod, please. State your name also.
There's no such plans. No. But what we will do now in the Baltic Sea Center is we're going to make some scenarios to look what will happen if we would regulate. Doesn't have to be a full stop. It could be also way to regulate different kinds of fisheries, and how that would have consequences for the stock development in the future. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much then, Gustaf.
Thank you.
Here's a small gift.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.